Welcome to another edition of From the Coach's Office, brought to you by the Varsity Voices Media Network. I am Dan Frevaletti, and here with me is my co-host, Joe Frevaletti. Today, we welcome to the podcast the new head coach for the St. Lawrence Vikings, Pat Swanson. Coach, thanks for joining us today, and congratulations on the new job.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me as well.
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com. You know, we talked a little bit before we started, and you've got quite the CCL, ESCC background. You played for Marian Catholic. Your father was a coach there for many years. You've been an assistant at Mount Carmel and now the head coach at St. Lawrence. What is it about this league that makes you want to build your career in it?
Yeah, kind of growing up in the ESCC and now the ESCC's combined in the Catholic League, I was kind of always told as a little kid that, these were two of the best conferences in the state every year. And then, when I was able to come back to Mount Carmel, you can see that the ESCC Catholic League, or the Catholic League as we know it now, it truly is the best conference, right? And you get the opportunity to play against the best coaches and the best teams from all over Chicagoland, whether, you're playing up north, out west, in the city, wherever it is. You truly find a challenge every week. And that's the fun of football, right? And that's kind of where I enjoy being around the game and kind of finding the local rivalries and do those things because it's what excites us as coaches.
So what do you see as some of the biggest challenges? We know how tough the conference is, right? But, as you go into this and go into this as a head coach and knowing the Chicago Catholic League, what in your mind do you see as kind of some of the biggest challenges for you going forward?
Man, I think that we already said it, the week-to-week battles you got, right? Looking at our schedule this year, we're in a division with Montini, Fenwick, and Carmel Mundelein. Montini's a state champion. Fenwick had a phenomenal year last year. They return a lot. And then you have Carmel Mundelein, who has a phenomenal quarterback as well as a handful of skill guys that are really well known. And then you look across the board at our non-divisional conference games. Brother Rice, who's going to be loaded again. You get a Notre Dame team that I've heard great things about, some of the new coaches that they brought in, and St. Pat's the same way. So, the challenges for sure is you can't really have an off week, so to speak, right? You can't have a lull or a throwaway game where you come out and you play poorly because you're in a conference now and you're in a position now where one bad week, it can really alter your season. I know we have the quote or, the drive for five, right? 5 games get you in. When you're playing in the Catholic League, that drive for 5, that's a challenge now. And, they know it, I know it, and we're excited for the mountain to climb ahead, but we're ready for the challenge a little bit.
Coach, you mentioned the white division. We loved watching it last year. Super competitive, and you mentioned a little bit about some of the returning talent. All the division opponents return what I would consider big time QBs. Your recent history is as a DB coach. Will those returning stars within the division have an impact on how you want to play defense?
Absolutely. I've already kind of looked at the schedule a few times. I know my hours of sleep are definitely going to have a hit because of that. But again, I'd rather, play against the best for that reason. You know what I mean? I know we're taking a big jump from 4A up to 6 or 7A, but playing these types of quarterbacks, playing these types of skill guys on both sides of the ball only prepare you to play those teams in the playoffs, right? We might all be at different levels in the Catholic League in terms of, what division or what A you're playing at in the playoffs, but talent is talent, right? And, if we can be successful and compete with this type of talent during the regular season, you're going to set yourself up to get that 5th win and obviously exceed those expectations, but also, get to the playoffs and be able to build off of that as well.
So what was it about the St. Lawrence job head coaching job that intrigued you or interested you, Coach?
Yeah, I guess a big thing for me, kind of looking at the job and the strict, I don't know how to want to word it, the scope of things. You're not starting at ground zero here. You look at their last 2 years, you get a quarterfinals team that takes DePaul Prep. They were up on DePaul Prep at halftime. Then you get a state championship finalist 2 years ago with some really top end talent kids. The foundation is there, which is good, right? It's definitely a lot easier when the foundation's there to start building things, right? And I always grew up, as I mentioned, with the Chicago Catholic League. And when I was growing up, St. Lawrence was a solid program, right? And now as we kind of begin to build this a little bit, my intrigue only continued to grow with my studies on the school, so to speak. And then once kind of getting to know Joe Martinez, who's our president, Tim Chandler, AD, and Christy Kane, our principal, it's an unbelievable spot. It's in my opinion, it's a little bit of a sleeping giant right now. They've done a phenomenal job of getting the school population to where it is. They've done a phenomenal job with the facilities. I've been blown away kind of with how great this place is and how the plan for the future for the entire school.
Coach, you're obviously new this year, and the coaching cycle in the league has some high profile names on it. But St. Lawrence, has quite a who's list of who's involved in the program as well. How do you plan on utilizing the experience in the school with both Frank Lenti and Tim Grunhard?
Yeah, I've got the opportunity to meet with Frank once a week for the last few weeks, and now once we start the more of the April months, he stops in and meets with the coaches, all head coaches. And man, we talk about a great tool. Every time we meet, we don't really talk football so much yet. We just talk different leadership techniques and different ways to coach your own coaches and different ways to utilize successes in terms of personality and relationships to build the culture within your program. And sometimes you don't think about those things when you're taking a head coaching job, right? You want to be the X's and O's, you want to be, the schematic gurus, but taking those things into effect, you look at, the quote, it's, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right. And that's kind of driven me a little bit to build the culture here first before I start really doing any of the X's and O's stuff. And that's kind of something that Coach Lenti taught me when I got here. In terms of Tim, Tim's been great. He's still currently out in Kansas City, just with his job currently with the Chiefs, but we're excited to get him here. He'll be here next month. And you talk about another tool to use, talk about the O-line experience and kind of the understanding of the game. I think he is going to be, major to the successes of our program, not only on the offensive line, but I think on the defensive line and then schematically. There's so many things he's seen, not only as a player, but as a very successful coach at Bishop Miege in Kansas. I'm very lucky to be surrounded or in a position to be surrounded by so many great coaches that have been successful at so many different levels.
Yeah, and you mentioned, what a good program it is, and that's one of the things that obviously interested you in St. Lawrence and in the position as head coach. From a numbers perspective, we saw over the last several years some numbers kind of within the program went down, but now they seem to be rebounding. How is that at St. Lawrence from your perspective?
For me right now, it's good, but I want to get it to be great. Coming from Mount Carmel, where we are used to having a high number, I wouldn't say we're too far off, but I do want to get that number up a little bit across the board for the whole program. Our freshman class this past year had roughly, I want to say 55 kids. Our freshman team had 55 kids on it. Our sophomores had closer to about 40, right? So I'd like to see that even out a little bit too, as I start to kind of build the program up. Just by the nature of the beast, some kids come out as a freshman, first time ever playing football, and they realize, you know what? This isn't for me. I want to be able to retain those guys, but also build on those numbers to you'll find out as you get to the varsity level, those numbers are huge, right? Whether it's practice or finding different guys to be in different personnels, those numbers are huge. So I'm definitely gonna work my butt off to kind of make sure that those numbers are what I expect them to be and what my standard is.
Coach, you're coming from Mount Carmel, obviously a ton of success there. And what, if anything, will you take from that program into your program at St. Lawrence?
Man, that's another great question. There's so many different things that I could take from it. I think the number one thing that Mount Carmel does a phenomenal job of kind of instilling in their players is toughness. The kids there are tough, and not only are they great football players, but those kids are tough, and they understand what tough means. From the 6 a.m. workouts, we got kids, when I was at Mount Carmel, we had kids driving from all over, right, to get there by, 5:55 so we can start our workouts at 6. There's a mental toughness that comes with that, and I think we have that a little bit here, but I really want to rev it up to the engine that, Mount Carmel is, so to speak, with the toughness level. And, tough people win is a quote that I've heard before. And there's some truth to that, right? If you don't have to be the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, but if you're able to, withstand, the battles, so to speak, those tough people, those tough individuals, those tough teams, they're always a hard out. And even if we aren't the most talented or whatever it may be, might be playing a team that's faster or bigger than us. If we're a tough out, I like our odds.
Yeah, and I think when you say toughness, obviously that goes to culture as well, right? And
absolutely.
Yeah, you talked about, creating that culture at St. Lawrence, whatever it is in your vision, toughness being one of those things. What would be some of the other things you would want to do from a culture standpoint to kind of instill within the St. Lawrence program?
Yeah, I think it kind of breaks down into, I have an acronym IDEA, right? ID, E, and A. I is investment, D is discipline, E is effort, and A is attitude. Those 4 things can go a very long way. I keep making the comment to the kids, we got to find your 5th gear, right? And you got 4 gears, but we got to find that extra gear. And I think to begin with that is kind of what you're investing into, not only yourself, but what you're investing into the program. Are you going to be there every day? At 6:30 when we start our workouts, right? We start school at 8:30. I'm able to get them at 6:30. It's been a little bit of a change for them, but I think they're really embracing it correctly, and I think they really have the right attitude about handling all their business in the mornings. The discipline of life or the discipline of football. Are you going to make the right decisions on and off campus? Are you going to make the right decisions on and off or in or out of the weight room, on and off of the field, in or out of the locker room, right? There's for 14 to 18-year-olds now, there's so many different ways they can do things wrong, right? And it's very easy for them to do things wrong. The discipline of doing the right thing and being the person that we want a Viking to be is huge. And then effort and attitude is strictly based on, the person themselves, right? Effort is just, giving your all, right? The only thing you can control really in this life is the effort and attitude you put into something. And the people that pay their dividends, so to speak, and put their, put themselves out there and make sure their effort is 100% or better, they're going to find success in the same way, right? Things aren't going to go your way. There's going to be adversity. What's your attitude going to be about it? Are we going to, hold our heads, or are we going to pick ourselves up off the mat a little bit and fight back and kind of give it our all?
Coach, it's not the NFL or college football, so we know you don't necessarily have the option of, hey, I'm going to bring in a whole new staff or anything like that. But are there any changes within the program from a staff perspective? And if so, what are they?
A few. I got to sit down with the former staff, and I got to meet a lot of really good guys. And I think the one thing that kind of blew me away is that the number from last year of how many staff members they had was a little bit different than what I had been used to, right? So not so much as there's reductions in our staff, but more additions to what we already had. So there's a couple of guys coming in that I'm really excited for. Kyle Pugh, who played for me at NIU, he was one of the 8-year football players that got the COVID year and a double medical. And man, you talk about a heck of a leader. He's probably the best leader on the football field I've ever seen, and he's a quiet kid. and I'm really pumped. He's going to be a teacher here. He's going to teach a leadership course. So I'm really excited to get him here. I'm bringing over Jackson Ryan, whose dad is actually the head coach at Sycamore High School. So he's got a coaching background. He's been in the game for a little bit. I'm excited to get him here as well. And then Nick Boehm, who is Mike Boehm's son, is also coming over, which is going to be huge for us, especially on our offensive side of the ball, where some of the things I kind of want to do, he's very familiar with already. So, those are just a couple of people right now. There's some other guys that I'm that are going to be added some lower levels a little bit, but those are going to be big pieces for me to kind of build this thing going a little bit and get a staff here.
Yeah, you're coming from Mount Carmel. Obviously, you talked about that. But prior to coaching at Mount Carmel, you were in the college ranks. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd be interested to hear too. What you feel like you can take from your coaching experience and that within the college ranks, and what things might apply to what you're doing here in high school.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be in a position to coach, to be a graduate assistant at Northern Illinois and be a defensive assistant at University of North Dakota. And those were kind of the years as a coach that molded me to kind of my style, so to speak. I was able to learn under some really great people. Eric Schmidt, Derek Jackson, Jordan Geely. Those are all guys that are kind of big name coaches now in the college world, and they did a great job of kind of teaching me how to adapt to my personnel. In college, you're capable of going across the country, right, to find guys that fit your scheme. When you're at certain places, it does become a little bit more challenging because you're not at the Floridas or the LSUs or the Alabamas, right? And you got to find guys within your region, so to speak. And I kind of took that to my high school level when I got to Carmel. I have to be able to adapt whatever we're going to do to the guys I have, right? And if you're a team that's better at doing something, run that instead of kind of trying to build them into your offense. And as you kind of do those things, it allows you to be more successful. It also makes you grow as a coach, right? It allows myself as a coach to pretty much, continue to learn, right? I'm never going to know everything about football. I'm never going to know, every single play or every single coverage or every single blocking scheme. And that gives me an opportunity to continue to grow and to continue to get better and, chase my goal.
Coach, we talking about, the staff, move to the players a little bit. We know you've got a returning all conference player and multi-sport star wide receiver, running back Corey Les returning. I know you haven't been there too long, but, is there anyone else that you've come to know and see that we should have on our radar as we enter next season?
Yeah, I think there's two that popped into my head right when you said that. Number one is Sean Rice. Sean is a sophomore for us. Put on some great weight. He looks like a grown man right now. Last year he played the X receiver and played a little defensive end. As I kind of look at him now, he's going to be a really athletic tight end Y body for us and probably play some rush end or outside linebacker. He played basketball. Obviously, we had a great basketball season, but was at every workout every morning, pushing himself heavily in terms of making himself stronger. He's coming into my office now at lunch and wanting to meet and talk over schematics on offense and defense. He's been a pleasure to be around. I am really excited to see what he's like in pads. I'm really excited to see what he's like on the football field. There's actually two other guys that I've also been very impressed with. Danny Highland, who played outside receiver for them last year. He's a true 6'4" now. I put a lot of dedication, a lot of work into his speed this offseason. And you can see it in the running that we do in the mornings. He's kind of elongated his stride, and it makes it really easy when you got a receiver that's 6'4" and long. Especially if he can jump. I believe he was a former volleyball player early on in his high school career. So that makes, that gets my eyes right nice and big, and excited to kind of throw those to him. And then Brian Killen's done a great job too. So Brian is kind of a Swiss Army knife on the defensive side a little bit. Last year he played nose guard, he played defensive tackle, he played inside linebacker, he played stand-up end. I think he's going to be able to find himself in a little bit of a home this year, which is going to be great. But weight room kid, hard-working, hard-nosed. He went to St. Christina, one of the only kids from that area to kind of come here out of his class, and he took a big jump, and it's paying dividends for him. I'm really excited to see what he's like, too, because, like I said, the kid's a hard worker. He's a great leader in the weight room. The kids respect him, and he's done a great job of kind of welcoming me in as well, and kind of, getting the kids to buy into the program and buy into the culture.
Yeah, so, Coach, there's I'll call it a lot of noise around high school football these days. A lot of changes going on, whether it's transfers, whether it's NIL, whether it's, some of the things coming out of the state associations about, the IHSA and the multiplier and those kinds of things. What are your feelings about that and about some of those topics? Is it really just noise, or is it something that you've really got to address and figure out how to work within that?
To me, you know what? I think to me right now, it's just noise. At the end of the day, you got to be able to compete. And I'm excited for the opportunity. Any chance I get to make the playoffs at whatever level, I'm excited for it, right? I know the competition is going to get stiffer, and that's perfectly fine. Like I said, I'm not going to be afraid of playing certain teams or be afraid of, playing up or whatever it may be. I know that that's a hot topic. I know that we faced that topic again during the basketball season. That's something that's always going to be there, so to speak. And I'm just excited for the opportunity to coach, against great programs. There's so many great programs in the state. Illinois high school football is dramatically underrated, And that's a hill I'll die on. There's so many great states, or so many great programs across the state, north to south, east to west, and I'm excited for the opportunity to play any of them. Obviously, I get 9 great games in the regular season, and through hard work and dedication, hopefully a little success, we're gonna find find ways to play great programs in the playoffs, and whether that's 4A, 5A, 6A, 7A. I think 7A, based on the new numbers that I saw when the article came out, is probably as high as we can go currently. But I'm excited for any of the opportunities that are in our future.
Coach, speaking of schedule, so you talked about obviously your division and the crossovers. Have you finalized the rest of your schedule for next fall?
We have, yeah. So we will open with King Prep, who was a playoff team last year. We'll play Evanston in week 2 at home. Notre Dame and Niles at home. Carmel Mundelein at home. So I get a nice 4-game stretch of home games to start, which is great. We'll play Leo away week 5, Fenwick away week 6, St. Pat's at home week 7, Brother Rice away week 8, and Montini at home week 9.
It sounds like a tough schedule.
Yeah, no, like I said, there's no easy ones in this league, and you got to buckle up. You got to buckle up and put your big boy pants on and be ready to hit and be ready to tackle and be ready to block because, like I said, there's no easy games ever.
No, there aren't. And any particular rivalries that, St. Laurence is kind of zoned in on, whether it's the players or the program overall, and over the years kind of, rivalry built up with some other school? Anything you've come across from that standpoint?
Just from being involved in high school baseball with the Do It Stevie's Way tournament, I know the baseball program has a pretty intense rivalry with Brother Rice. It seemed like basketball had a pretty good rivalry this year with Mount Carmel. Obviously, they beat them, or Mount Carmel won in the sectional championship, but St. Lawrence won in the regular season. Football-wise, I guess it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit from what I've understood. It seems like certain years we've kind of had it out for certain teams and they've had it out for us, and other years it's kind of changed over to different teams. So, I know that there's definitely some. For me, there's obviously I want to win the league games, right? So those are going to be kind of my rivalry games, I guess, so to speak, if I had to make one up. But it doesn't seem like we are exactly attached to a certain school football wise as our main rival, based on as I've kind of looked at if I've gotten to know people in the school.
Sure.
Although it could be Mount Carmel if you ever play them again, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that would be that'd be a
that
good
might
one.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coach, we talked about being at Mount Carmel and the program, but St. Lawrence also has a great tradition of football success dating back 50, 60 plus years. Do you think high school tradition is still a good motivator for today's players, the tradition that the school has, or are their lives just too distracting to understand some of that stuff?
I think it's still a huge motivator. At the end of the day, there's people that put on these jerseys. We might have different jerseys, but there's guys that put on these jerseys for decades before you did. And I think that's kind of something I want to get involved with a little bit of getting these kids. If you wear, Corey is, what was he last year? 80. I think this year he's looking to be a different number, but I want him to meet the 80s of years past, right? Dave Payton is a great alum here, and I'm lucky to know him as a very close family friend. I want them to come back, and I want them to tell their story and how they can impact these kids' futures. Because at the end of the day, the logo on the front, the name on the front is always going to be there, right? The name on the back is going to change, the body in the jersey is going to change, but you want these kids to represent your number, right? I was number 2 in high school. I love looking back at my old school and seeing who was number 2, this past year or whatever it may be. So I do think that that's a great motivator. I think it just has to be done in the right way, right? If you have a guy come in and there's not much of a relationship built, I think sometimes the kids can, lose interest. But if we're able to kind of tie him into the program and how important it is for him to be back, I think it's going to be huge. And that's where, Tim Grunhard comes into play. You look at the success that they had when he was here. I mean, he's got a national championship ring. He's inducted to an NFL organization's Hall of Fame. I think that his story and his, history holds a lot of weight with these kids. And one thing I have noticed about these kids is that they are very smart and they do listen. And I think that that's going to be huge from them kind of understanding that, the people who wore the jerseys way before you, this is important to them, and the logo and the name is important to them, and you represent them now. So what we put not only on the field, but what we put out into our community, definitely has an impact on our view of how we were seen.
So, Coach, I have one more question for you, and excuse me. This is we've interviewed, I don't know how many, Dan, 7, 8, 9 coaches over the past year. From the CCL. And I've asked them all this question and love to hear the answer. But, if we're sitting down a year from now and doing another interview, you've been through your first full season at St. Lawrence. What do you hope we're talking about a year from now regarding St. Lawrence football?
Man, I think everybody's goal is probably the exact same, right? I hope a year
You're
from
close.
now, I hope a year from now we're sitting here talking about a state championship season. And like I said, it doesn't matter to me what level division we're at, right? The opportunity to play for an IHSA state championship is any program's dream, right? It's any program's goal. When you check back into any coach on August 15th or whatever the week is, right, August 21st, and you say, hey, what's the goals for the season? They're all probably going to tell you the same thing, right? So for me, I'm going to aim high, right? I'm going to shoot high, and I'm going to expect myself to hit it. And I know that there's only 8 coaches that get to say they won it every year, or 8 programs, that get to say they won it every year. But my goals are never going to change. And I told the kids that, right? Winning is a value to me. Winning is an expectation to me, and I'm going to do what it takes to win, right? And I think they've kind of bought into that idea and that culture a little bit. And like I said, hopefully in June when you guys, or hopefully in December, we're having another conversation where it's talking about the season, and hopefully it's ending in a state championship.
Well, Coach, that's awesome. We really appreciate your time today, and this was great. We wish you nothing but the best of luck next year. We hope we can have you on again. We can't wait until the fall, so we really appreciate your time.
Awesome. No, thank you. This was great.
Great. Well, we'd like to thank St. Laurence head football coach Pat Swanson for joining us today on this edition of From the Coach's Office, presented by the Varsity Voices Media Network. You can find the Varsity Voices podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and look for us on social media. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you for listening, everyone, and talk to you soon. If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.